Eric, you're covering that in Israel and company. Looks like we're here as the support of the applicant. So go right ahead.
This is a type 1 action under secret. The town board has declared lead agency status for this project and has already made a negative declaration. We attached that document to the planning department memorandum, and the board hopefully has read it. There's been a number of changes since the last review, which was your initial review. The building has been reduced in size, roughly 2,000 square feet. Total lot coverage has been reduced roughly 3%. The floor plan layout has been changed. The helicopter pad is no longer proposed. The connecting road to this location, 159 Panago Road, is no longer proposed, and changes to the parking layout have been made. At the time of the initial review, the board requested a narrative addressing a number of questions regarding the nature of the operation of the facility. The planning board has not received answers to these direct questions. I said as of the date of this memo, we still haven't received them. The applicants did submit a letter that was in response to comments at the town board meeting that does address a number of issues related to the nature of use. That was also attached to the memorandum. The board should also take note that you've received one written comment about the nature of use of the facility from the public, and that was also attached. And we do note that the town board agreed to lease the 400 Panago Road property to Stony Brook Southampton Hospital to create an emergency room that's expressly written in the lease. We did attach the lease agreement, and that wording is in there. So the board should just take note that this facility is required under the terms of that legal agreement to be for emergency services. So as noted at the time of the initial review, a medical arts ambulatory care or clinic is the closest use definition with a parking requirement. At the time of the initial review, the plan proposed 72 spaces. They've now reduced the size of the building, which reduces the parking requirement, and they're proposing 56 spaces. At this time, I'm going to screen share with you just so you can see the plans. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so these should be the revised, or this is the revised general site plan. As you can see, it's much the same as the previous proposal, just with, again, some minor changes, reduction in size of the building, etc. They're also proposing they're still proposing 2 truck spaces and 4 ambulance spaces. There was an ambulance garage that was supposed to be, and I will use our handy dandy high-tech feature here, if I can. Oh, not working. There we go. Which was supposed to be up in this area here, which is proposed now just to be a regular carport, not a concealed garage. So the board at the time of the initial review formed a consensus that the application should be referred to a consulting engineer. Since that time, again, the town board is lead agency. They have made a negative declaration. Among those findings is that there would be no significant adverse impact on traffic and circulation. The EIF also, well, there were actually 2 traffic studies done, an original one and then an amended one. The original traffic study, which found that there would not be a significant impact on Montauk Highway, was in regard to a building of 32,000 plus square feet. They've since reduced that to less than 22,000 square feet, which is an almost 1/3 reduction in size. The amount of generated vehicular trips in these traffic studies is based on the size of the building. So that document does seem to be even an overestimation of the traffic impacts that you can anticipate from this project. However, we do reiterate to you that it was a strong consensus of the planning board to request that an outside consulting engineer review this project, for the planning board. However, you should consider the findings of the traffic study. Most importantly, that the primary detriment would be an increasing time required for turning movements off of Panago Place onto Montauk Highway. We found that there would be little no impact on through traffic. And it really is the sole discretion of the DOT as far as what would be put at this intersection right here between Panago Place and Montauk Highway. They have recommended that a traffic light be installed. That is included in the traffic study. But basically, I think that if you did get a consulting engineer to look at this, their comments would be based or would be limited to on-site circulation, the design of access. If I can maybe scroll down here, this will help a little bit. Which again, the circle is proposed to, well, that's not helping out too much. Scroll down a little bit more. The circle at the end of Panago Place is still proposed to remain. Again, the main entrance would be a two-way traffic pattern through here. This would be a one-way traffic pattern for the ambulances to the back of the property. Excuse me, I cut through to. It would come all the way up here behind the building. I'm down south behind the building, but this would be the main entrance into the parking lot, and then there would be two-way traffic throughout. The rear area of the site would be limited to ambulance traffic and employees. So I think really at this point, that's probably the most you would get from a consulting engineer as far as creating traffic and circulation issues. But that is something that the board certainly said at the initial review. You should have that discussion again. Another thing that the board wanted a consulting engineer to look at the initial review was the grading and drainage. The applicants have submitted a comprehensive site grading and drainage plan. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site. It is about as flat as a property can get. There are no wetlands or unique natural features that I think would have any significant impacts on, the need for special drainage control structures. They've submitted a grading and drainage plan with spot elevations, both existing and proposed. It's been stamped by a licensed professional. I don't feel that you need any additional information, but you should have that discussion. It had come up during the initial review and certainly was a big point of interest when the town board was discussing this, and before we even got to the town board, I discussed this with the applicants, that this area of town, which I will zoom in a little bit more for you and highlight this. So highlighted, sorry, I keep forgetting I have to stop screen sharing and then start again when I do this for some reason. I will start again. Okay, so we all know where the property is, but just to give you a general idea, an idea of the general area. Obviously, the baseball field's there, the highlighted parcel is the subject parcel. This area right here, and in fact, I think I can remember the exact property. I think it's exactly this one over here. There was an excavation performed a number of years ago, I believe in the 1930s. I'm forgetting exactly when, but it is listed in the EAF, which you should have the full EAF document. There was an excavation done that found bodies of Montauk Indians who were buried there during a smallpox outbreak. So it is a known archaeological site. When you reviewed the Panago Hill subdivision, which is right here, as well as the EEB Farms subdivision, which is right there, you did require a stage 1A and stage B archaeological survey. Stage 1A is just a report, as a reminder, and the stage 1B is actual physical shovel test pits. The applicants formulated an archaeological survey, performed a stage 1A and 1B on the subject property. It was actually much more in depth than any of the ones I've seen on most of the other subdivisions that have required that. They actually dug trenches, pulled back the sod, pulled back a couple of inches of soil. That plan was formulated through the state Office of Historic Preservation in collaboration with one of their employees. So obviously, since the EAF was adopted, there were no artifacts found, and a negative declaration was made, and the town board found that there would be no impact on archaeological resources because after that thorough investigation, none were found. There is another issue where that was discussed at the initial review, which is in relation to a 50-foot wide buffer that was established as part of the Pospisil subdivision, which created this lot. That buffer contains language in it that states, and I'm trying to just find the best visual for you here. Yeah, I just going back to that. Okay. Again, but so that buffer says that there can be no residential structures within it. This obviously that's this area here along the train tracks. Starting here, that area along the northern property line. The applicants are proposing to have both portions of the sanitary system and a couple of drainage control structures in there. We called to question whether or not the covenant and that buffer would prohibit that. Additionally, we've been proposing for a while to have a minimum 20-foot, preferably 25-foot wide bike path through this area as part of the South Fork bike path connection. We were wondering whether or not the wording would preclude that. Counsel for the applicants has spoke with your counsel. I believe they have a resolution to that issue. I'll let Thomas address that when I'm done speaking here, but I believe it's the position of the town attorney's office that as proposed, there's nothing in those covenants or that buffer that prohibits what's being proposed now from being put in that area. And again, there are no above ground structures proposed in that area, just drainage, a few drainage structures and caps to the low nitrogen sanitary system. So there's only a couple other issues remaining. The board had requested information pertaining to noise. There's a 6,000 gallon diesel generator that's proposed here. I believe in reading the wording of the code and chapter 185, which is noise, which again, I'll remind the board, neither you nor the ZBA has the power to waive the noise requirements if it can't be demonstrated that they can't meet what's required under the code. That's not something that a variance can be sought for. However, there's a specific exemption in the town code regarding noise that exempts the activities of any fire department, ambulance squad, or similar emergency or rescue organization. I believe that does pertain to this property. However, and also we note that they are proposing the generator right here, which is 50 feet away from that northern property line. And again, that northern property line is train tracks. You have to go another 75 feet, I believe, on the other side of that to get to a residential boundary. And that's actually a protected, although residentially zoned, it's a CPF purchased town-owned lot. But the board should discuss the potential for noise from the generator. Another aspect of the generator you might want to discuss is, again, this is proposed as a diesel generator. It's been recommended that where generators are required, especially with personal wireless service facilities, that the applicants consider using propane. This completely eliminates the potential for leaks as a non-liquid fuel source. They're proposing this on a concrete pad, as you can kind of see illustrated there. But that is something that should be considered, and you should discuss the potential for that with the applicants. The fire marshal has signed off on this and has checked it for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Architectural Review Board has reviewed this, I believe, twice. They stated that they had no comments at the time that they last reviewed it, although that was September of last year. The applicants have submitted a comprehensive site lighting plan as well as a site landscaping plan. The lighting plan conforms with all requirements of the town code. The planning department had outlined a number of elements of the previous plan that were non-compliant. They have corrected those. So yeah, that I actually want to come back to, which is the floor plan. But I wanted to get to the landscaping plan. There we go. So that is their site landscaping plan. It's mostly unchanged from what you saw at the initial review. They do propose to leave areas of existing vegetation around the periphery. However, it's a very nice mix of trees and low-lying shrubs in the interior of the site. We have no objection to it, but the planning board should review it. Other than that, those are the issues that really need to be addressed. The application is technically incomplete at this time. However, once you do address all of those issues, It will be ready to be scheduled for a public hearing. Again, just as a summary, you should discuss the nature of the operation and decide if you need a narrative or any further documentation from the applicants. You should discuss whether or not the reduced amount of parking, which I should have mentioned is still above what's required by the code, if I didn't mention that, whether or not that's acceptable. You should determine whether or not you still feel that you need an outside engineer or any additional information with regard to traffic or drainage control. And you should consult the issue of the 50-foot buffer with council and discuss the issues I just mentioned about the generator. So.
Very, very thorough. Thank you. It requires thoroughness. Thanks for giving it. Well,
Did you want to address?
oh, yeah, sorry, before you go, Thomas.
Yes.
Talk about the,
So, I mean, as far as that covenant, Liz, John, Janicki, and I had a long discussion about that. And long story short is we feel that the covenant doesn't apply to this particular use in this particular lot because the covenant is for residential improvements and residential lots, and this is neither. So I can put that in a memo to the file to make a record, but that's it.
thanks very much.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. Liz Vale, Brown Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, New York. On behalf of the applicant, Southampton Hospital Association, for the proposed emergency room department at 400 Pantico Place. I'm here tonight with our engineer, Robert DeBruin of DeBruin Engineering, and our architect, Joanne Violenti of Perkins Eastman. As the board is aware, we obtained a zone change for the subject property from the town board, changing the zoning from parks and conservation to commercial industrial. And the proposal is for a semi-public facility in the CI zoning district. Our structure meets all zoning requirements for CI and will not require any variances in connection with the project. We recently amended our application to reduce the proposed building from 23,830 square feet to 21,962 square feet, reducing the proposed lot coverage from 53% to 50%, eliminating the helistop or helipad from the plan, and reducing the parking based on the reduced square footage of the building. We have submitted a traffic study, an updated traffic study, an archaeological study, fully engineered site plans, lighting plans, landscaping plans for the board's consideration. The town board of the town of East Hampton, as the lead agency on the project, conducted a coordinated secret review and adopted a negative declaration by resolution number 2020 of 8-859, which was adopted on September 15th, 2020. And pursuant to, and essentially, the nature of our application is intended to address the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the town of East Hampton by providing emergent medical care in a closer location than Southampton Hospital. This is a proposed emergency room that will be run by the state of New York, SUNY Stony Brook Hospital. It will be open 24 hours, 7 days a week. It will be a 911 receiving site and regulated by the New York State Public Health Law, Article 28. The town of East Hampton in October 2016 conducted a planning study that chose the site of 400 Pantico Place as the preferred site for the emergency room and outlined the distances, anticipated travel times between each of the fire departments and this site as opposed to the travel time it takes to get to Southampton Hospital. For example, the travel time for East Hampton Fire Department to the existing Southampton Hospital at Southampton Village on Meeting House Lane is 33 minutes. It's 13 miles away. It would be 4 minutes to get here to 400 Pantico Place, which is 1 mile away. The time for the Montauk Fire Department was 58 minutes to the existing Southampton Hospital in Southampton Village, since it's 27.8 miles away, and 26 minutes to 400 Pantico Place, which is only 14 miles away. So that's the purpose of our application. We can answer any and all questions you have. I have Ms. Violenti at Perkins Eastman is going to run through the actual site plan for you, the amended site plan, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Joanne Violenti, and I just want to say that Eric did a wonderful job kind of explaining the project. So I really don't have too much to say, but we have reduced the number of parking spaces from 72 to 56, and that was really a function of the fact that we've reduced the number of seats in the waiting area because we took some functions out of the building that allowed us to do that. So as you can see from the site plan, the public parking is on the lower portion of the site with the ADA spaces above that. There's a ring road that is serving the 4 ambulance berths in the back, as well as the service drive. There is the emergency generator up on the western side of the site at the top. Below that is there's a carport that would actually house the Southampton ambulance that would take people from here to the hospital if they need to. The 4 berths would be for typical EMS people to service the facility. The parking to the left, there's 15 spaces for staff members and a staff entrance. The building has a solar collector, which you see on the roof. And I think one of the changes, there's really been very minimal changes to the interior since the last time we presented this. The 4 corners of the building are in the same spots. But what we did do is we did take some of the mechanical equipment, which had been in a recessed well on the roof, and bring that down to grade in an enclosure in the back of the site, which you can see there. So that's really the primary change. We still have the large clear story on the building. It looks, do we want to just take a quick look at the plans?
I can, yeah. The architectural drawing.
Yeah, sure. The colored plans are really exciting.
So I guess the best way to do it is probably to, oops. You know, if you just click through each one.
Okay.
And then you have to go.
So this is the overall.
Oh, you know what? I gotta stop screen sharing again. Sorry. Harder technology here. Should stop and start again. Man, you should have it now. You should actually. Here we go. Yeah, you could just click up and down and it'll go through each
Okay.
page.
So just clicking up and down, you can see the entrance off of Pamtico Road. Originally in the prior submission, we were actually modifying the circle now that we've reduced the parking and reconfigured the ring road access. We were able to eliminate that feature. So as Eric mentioned, the site is very flat. It's cleared of landscaping. We are doing a major re-landscaping of the site with putting in over 135 trees on the site, all native from the pine and oak forest that's indigenous to the area. The building has on the landscaping side.
No, it's not a touch screen.
Okay. So in the landscaping side, in this area here, this is a rain garden. We tried to incorporate some natural features. So this is a rain garden here. There's the emergency entrance is there. Imaging is here. Those are the ambulance drop-off bays over there. Loading, the generator, again, the staff entrance to the side. There are some staff picnic areas and amenities like a volleyball court, informal on the lawn, just to try to give the staff some respite because they do work hard and long hours. So this is the elevations. On the lower portion of the site, you can see the front elevation with a lot of glass in the waiting areas. We're trying to bring natural light in and views of nature into the site, bringing clear story into the actual ED and try to use natural lighting into the deeper part of the site, and then you can see the solar array on the side. That's the back area here. This is the screen mechanical enclosure now, which used to be up on a portion of the roof. What you're seeing here is actually it's a little overdrawn, but it's just a walkway that services some of the exhaust fans that are located on the roof. So that's the front and the back elevation. And then the side, this is the side with the treatment bays. Almost all of the treatment bays, there's 10 within the site. They all tried to integrate windows into all of this so people had a view of nature. Again, this is the side elevation, the ambulances go around. This is that staff entrance that we talked about, and the service entrance is there. These are just some sections through the property. Large truss structure. The building exterior is actually trestle. I don't know if you know that material, but it looks like wood. It's a high pressure residence material, standing seam roof. The glazing on the building is all hurricane proof. I think we have a stuck here.
I froze, I guess.
Okay.
Just give it a second. Went too fast. You too quick for it. All right, here, I'll get back for you. Sorry about that. We're still working out the kinks of.
No, it's a great system. Get to the code floor plan.
Yeah, I'm just trying to jump on a couple of things here because it's actually not this computer. It's my computer back in the office. I'm remote connecting. Yeah, it just froze up. Let me try and work on it, and I don't know if you have any other.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any questions on, we briefly discussed the generator. I can answer some questions about that. It's a large generator. It's 800 kVA, so it's quite significant. We did look into the idea of going with a propane generator for this type of facility. The Department of Health and the CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid Services, require that it's a type 1 generator. So that means that there needs to be uninterruptible fuel source. So that would either mean tanks on site, or we would need to get the propane authority, whatever, to actually certify that the system will be able to be serviced throughout an emergency. So sometimes lines are subject to breakage or flooding or something. So that's we've had our engineers said that they have not been successful with other gas authorities trying to get that kind of dispensation. But other considerations relative to the diesel versus the propane. I mean, the diesel is noisier. But it's less expensive. And the problem with the propane is that given the size of our generator, we exceed the maximum size right now that propane generators can support. So there would have to be multiple generators and they would be larger. So it would have a much larger footprint on the site if we had to go that route, and we would need to either have propane tanks on site, or somehow get dispensation from the gas authority that this would be an uninterruptible power source, because it is a code requirement for a hospital. This is a hospital use.
So have you checked I think there's a gas main pretty near there. I wondered if you checked the street gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'm Robert DeBruin, civil engineer for 1400 Old Country Road in Westbury. There's a 2-inch gas line on Panago Place, which is not actually sufficient to either run the generator or run the building. National Grid is in the process of an infrastructure upgrade that is going to provide enough gas on Panago Place to provide for the heating and hot water in the building. That project is supposed to be completed at the end of this year. We just spoke with them today just to confirm that.
Would that be sufficient for the emergency purposes as well?
That's a question, that's a mechanical engineering question, which I'm not qualified to answer what the issues are with the generator.
So we still, even with that gas line, you're still going to need a backup emergency generator. And right now, diesel is the most viable.
Diesel's the most viable. The diesel, there's certain, hospitals typically like to use certain manufacturers that are really reliable, and And those typically tend to be diesel. I think the other thing that the engineer said, unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, but they said that there's some latency issues with the propane when it doesn't come on. There's a certain number of seconds that it needs to come up, to meet the criteria. And sometimes with the propane, they're not quite as speedy as the diesel.
Would it need to be tested on a regular basis?
Yes. I think in general, they would need to. Typically, they're like tested on a monthly basis.
For like, what, half an hour or so?
Something like that.
Run it. But otherwise, the diesel generator would only run in the event of a power outage,
Right.
so that the facility itself doesn't turn dark.
Now, I'm not clear that the propane problems you're talking about are also true of the street gas. That they're not really identical, I don't think. So I'm wondering if we really got an answer to the question of if it's by the end of this year, there'll be an expanded gas main. Would that allow you to use a gas generator that doesn't have some of the problems you're talking about? We've
Typically it's
propane
or diesel.
because we've used, I guess,
And you're talking about like natural.
natural gas. That's what's in those mains, I think.
Yes.
I think from what I read in the mechanical engineer's report, you'll rarely get a gas authority to certify that gas will be available when it's needed in an emergency.
Yeah.
That's
the hang up.
Yeah, is that you have a located source of fuel, like a diesel, a tank, I guess is what it would be. And that's what's turned on when all the ordinary services
Right.
are,
It's immediately
for whatever reason,
accessible.
not used.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because when they're dependent on gas from a utility, it's different.
Right. And
Plus PSEGs, I don't blame it. There's no,
and
get the electricity to us.
Yeah, but I mean, at most it would be a temporary, until the regular facility, until the gas or electricity or whatever the utility would be, comes back online. Presumably, because this is a hospital facility, the people who decide what gets fixed first in an emergency would say, let's get to the hospital right quick. We would hope.
yeah, and that, the tank that we have proposed, it's a belly tank, which is like, it sits under the generator. So it really, the footprint is kind of minimized because the generator is mounted above this tank, and then there's a containment basin around it that that accommodates more than 100% of the capacity of the tank. So I don't think spillage really should be an
I'm sure that
issue.
would have been our next question.
Yes, it would.
Just so you know, I think I got this back working. If you want to show
Okay.
the elevation.
That'd be great. Yeah, so this is the exterior rendering that we've got. There's a light well here to bring some light into the front. This is the front. You can see the traffic goes around to the back side. There's the rain garden is there, and we have a lot of glass in the front. And the overhangs on the front are quite deep. They're about 15 feet deep to provide a covered colonnade in the front of the building, and also in the back where the ambulances are discharging. They're discharging under a similar covered colonnade. Can you do the next one?
You'd have to do it through here, but I can help you out if you
Yeah.
want. They can actually hear you.
Yeah,
perfectly on
right?
TV from
Okay.
there if you want.
Okay, that's fine. And then this is a view from the other direction. You can see the employee entrance, the picnic area there on the side. We've got, this is the vertical Trespa panels. It kind of looks like wood, is what it really, you would assume that it was if you didn't know any better. And we've got the glazing, which is vision glass, and then there's a metal panel above and below that.
Next one.
Next one, sure. And then this is a view of the back. This is the walkway, which is a little over detailed, the railing, but you can see the 4 ambulance bays, and then beyond that would be the carport. And the service drive is tucked away. All of the trash holding. Can you get to the plan? You can just take a quick look at the floor plan.
Yeah, that might be a little.
Or maybe might as well do 15 while we're looking at,
Okay.
yeah, and then this is that covered colonnade area with the picnic area. People are waiting for loved ones inside. They can kind of come outside and get a little fresh air and, make a phone call, whatnot.
I think I can get to the floor plan, but you got to give me about 30 seconds.
Okay. Just want to take you briefly through the plan. All the trash holding and everything is within the building. We've got, facilities for that, for the medical waste and the outgoing linens and things like that. It's all contained within the structure.
The floor plan with the breakdown of the rooms, right? Is what you're looking for?
Yeah, just the color floor plan.
Oh, I mean, was it in the ARB submission?
Should be. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted me to do separate plans. My apologies.
It's just a little easier to read
Yeah.
because of the color.
Sorry about that. There we go. So is that further along in this packet or was back at the top?
There we go.
Okay. Should have it in 2 seconds.
So just so you have an idea of what the interior of the building is like, this is the entrance for the ED. It's got seating along the window wall. All the orange spaces are treatment spaces. So this is the resuscitation room where somebody comes in. It's almost like a little operating room where they get people back up and running. Nurses station in the center, the support spaces, and then each of the 10 treatment areas are arrayed around that. They are all properly sized. Everything is kind of driven by the state code in terms of the sizes and the criteria, but there are different specialties. Ophthalmology, there's a couple isolation rooms. If somebody comes in that's contagious, there's an obstetrics room. So they all have different capabilities and they can kind of flip-flop. There's some imaging spaces that are required as part of the ED. So that would be the CT space and the X-ray rooms. And then this other waiting area here is for the imaging, the diagnostic portion of the site. And it's really just this waiting room and then these some of these green spaces here. The other ones are dedicated to the ED and they kind of do double duty. And then
ED, I'm sorry for my ignorance. What's that stand for?
ED, Emergency Department. And then, so these pink are support spaces that are required by the building. This is all of the interior mechanical, and then the brown, this is kind of the trash holding spaces. There are medical gases. We've got, there's piped oxygen, air, and vacuum to these stations. It's a real hospital. There's head walls on the wall, and there's services that are throughout these spaces. That's pretty much it. I mean, everything is sized with like large corridors that can accommodate a stretcher, 8 foot wide, like a typical hospital. It is, it's not really an urgent care. It's a hospital, and it meets all the criteria. And these, and what you see on the plan is with the exception of a few of the green spaces, is actually required by the code. So this kind of stuff that we would see in a normal ED within a hospital. It's just that you don't have the other functions that normally come with the hospital. There's
The turquoise area, is that
the turquoise area is a future MRI. The equipment's not going in now, but we've designed it so that it can be accommodated when the hospital can afford it.
I don't know who this question goes to, but do you see people coming then for, you say, diagnostic functions or an MRI who are not there by ambulance?
Let's do that
Wait,
discussion
later.
after.
Okay.
Hold on.
And there's,
I know, I get a sense of what the application.
there's laboratory services to, to accommodate the ED, and it's basically, that's the floor plan.
This might be a question for Liz. Why was the helipad eliminated? I'm just curious about that.
Because it's actually off-site, so that was proposed off-site, and we didn't have control or authority off of, it's on town property on here.
Yeah.
So it was not something, with the town's actually been revamping a lot of the town campus as well, so that was not contemplated in their plan. And emergency helicopters can actually land anywhere it's safe. So we determined based on all of those factors that we could still have access to a helicopter when necessary.
Okay,
And we wouldn't be losing that feature just because we weren't establishing it on someone else's property.
got it. Okay.
And we turn to the committee member. Ian?
Yeah, I have, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, applicants. It looks like a beautiful building, but I guess I'll leave that to the ARB to decide. I frankly have mixed feelings about this application. I was one of the board members who wasn't ready to recommend the zone change because I just didn't feel that I had enough information at that time. And frankly, I'm still not sure that I do. This is the right place for this project in town. However, I think that our role here as a planning board is somewhat limited. And you've gotten the zone change, and if it's CI, I want to look at it just based on our standards. And I think that frankly, you meet them. I do have some concerns still. The first one is traffic. I guess I got a question for Eric. And Eric, I'm sorry I didn't ask you this earlier. We did speak about the project, but what was the delay in the turning from Pantego Place? I didn't mean to put you on the spot, and I feel bad for.
I could probably tell you within a couple of minutes, because I could.
Okay, or we can revisit it. Well, my concern with traffic, and I do think that with the town board being lead agency and, making a negative declaration, that the traffic has been decided, I think, by the way that, government works. So I'm not sure we can then come and say, hey, we don't think so. I
just want to say, because this is going to recur, is that our special permit standards. Yeah, I know, but I mean, I don't think that's correct, that we can't look at traffic. I think that special permit standards give us almost virtually the same amount of authority as secrets. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we would be at odds. Well, I look forward to exploring this issue further. And what struck me about the EAF that the town board submitted, EAF Part 3, was they referred to Montauk Highway as if that was the only traffic concern. I know the traffic study was much bigger than that, and I have to be honest, I didn't read through the whole thing. But it was almost like, the problems are only on Pantego Place. Montauk Highway is fine. And I'm concerned about that left-hand turn from Pantego Place, which is already problematic, frankly. And so traffic is a concern to me. My instinct at this time is if the town board, I don't like when different town agencies give different answers and make it impossible for, progress or an answer one way or the other. And I do feel that with a negative declaration and a traffic study done and then revised, and the town board, I think, is clearly pushing for this project. They've got a lease, they changed the zone, and we are frankly a lesser board. And if they address those issues head on, I don't want to then come in and say, oh, we might have this little thing to get our hooks into and say, no. That said, Randy, I welcome your comments on traffic. It's a concern, and I think that I have a healthy dose of skepticism about this project, and frankly, whether that's the right place for a hospital extension or the ball fields. But all of that said, the zone change is granted. I think if it's CI, I don't think this is a huge amount of traffic. So it's zone CI now. If it's zone CI, presumably something can go there that fits CI. And I think that in that context, this is, a sensible plan. And for what it's worth, I don't want to be overly negative here. I do think that this is definitely filling a community need. There's no question about that. I recently had to take somebody to a walk-in center, and there was not one available. It was not a true emergency, thankfully, but literally could not walk into any walk-in center within 15 miles of here. And that is problematic. The narrative, I definitely think we need a narrative. I read through your response to Councilman Bragman. I think you addressed a lot of issues there, although I think a lot of things have changed since then. I think we detailed in our last memo to you the type of things we're looking for, and just for the file to make sure that we fully understand. I know you've explained to us here a bit, but would like to have that on the record and make sure that there's nothing else in there that we need to examine more closely. Drainage, I don't think we need to hire a consulting engineer to look at drainage. I think that, as Eric pointed out, when we spoke about this earlier, it's fairly straightforward. The licensed engineer has looked at it. I don't think it's particularly sensitive, and frankly, I think that it's not our decision whether we have a town engineer or we don't, but we don't right now, and I think that our budget is somewhat limited for when we. I would like to have, a town engineer look at everything, frankly, to make sure that what your engineer says is accurate and that we agree. But I do think we have to be somewhat judicious with the use of that, because we can't have them look at every project. I don't think that we can, and that hasn't been our practice. As far as the traffic, I'd be curious to see what the other board members think. I wouldn't mind having a consultant engineer look at that traffic study just to say, hey, everything was done in the way that is typically done. I'm not sure if we have that authority. I think, Eric, I trust Eric's judgment immensely. He's seen a lot of traffic studies. He looked at it, said everything was done, very appropriately. And I don't anticipate a problem there, but I would be open to looking at traffic with the consultant engineer, less so, I think, the drainage.
Regarding traffic, do you have any particular preference or direction that things?
If it's up to me, I would say I would want a town hired engineer to look at the traffic study that was done, not redo a new traffic study, but just say, yes, the numbers that were used are the standard numbers. We agree with that. I don't know if we can I don't know what our policy is there, or what we can do. I don't think we can just hire an engineer to do anything we want. I'm just not sure how that works. Thomas, do you have any idea?
There's the definition of town engineer includes consulting engineer. We've hired consulting engineers in the past, but Eric in the planning department's made a recommendation, that's really, I would tend to let Eric, advise you on whether or not you need an engineer for this particular application.
I can show you the results of the traffic study as far as the level of service and the time delay, if you'd like to have it up there.
Yeah.
Can I speak to the traffic when you have it? Just a quick question, because you mentioned, Eric, that if we hired somebody, that they would be looking more in the internal circulation and they wouldn't necessarily be looking at that left exit, like Ian keeps mentioning, out of onto
We could
Panther.
probably ask them to look at
the parameters.
The problem, one of the problems we have with the exit onto 20, we're saying onto 27.
I mean, that is, I think.
Is it's a
Ian,
state
right,
highway.
is that, oh.
It's a state- I'm not saying that should.
Well, but I just, before Eric speaks, I will say that in other projects, we've looked at intersections well off-site. So I have a hard time accepting that we can only look at on-site.
Because that to me would be the one.
Yeah, no, I
The
agree.
left
Listen,
turn on
the
27.
real impact is on 27. The problem, as I see it, and maybe I'm wrong, but is that 27 is a state highway. So any issue that's going to be addressed with respect to 27 is going to necessarily involve New York State Department of Transportation. And
So
that's kind of where our jurisdiction ends.
Well, it creates a problem though when the traffic study that we have says that the good mitigation would be a traffic light that we have no say over. How is it necessarily mitigation if we don't know if it's ever going to be done?
It's a very good point.
And I agree. I think we have to assume that there is no traffic light for the purpose of this review, because there's not a traffic light.
Could be a roundabout, could be a traffic light. Neither this board nor the town board really has any authority over that. It's the DOT. Although I would say that I certainly don't think it would hurt if this board has a feeling one way or the other to proactively reach out to the DOT and discuss that with them. Certainly through our department, we can help with that. And, if this board wants to formulate a formal letter that would be sent to them. I will note, though, that when the town board declared lead agency, a letter was sent to the DOT as an involved agency. When the EAF was adopted with a negative declaration, that was also sent to the DOT. And we haven't received any substantive comments at this point. But I guess to make a couple of points, first of all, you certainly can seek to hire a consulting engineer and ask them whatever you want. But I do think the findings that are in the traffic study, first of all, the methodology used is completely consistent with, I've reviewed a lot of these in the 14 years plus that I've been here. It's completely consistent with most of the other ones. Done Engineering performed it. They're a well-known engineering firm. But to look at the specific numbers, which they're not good, and anybody, we have to, my colleagues and I in the planning department have to turn out of that road every day. And everybody, I think, in town knows that they're not, the traffic conditions at the intersection of Panago Place and Montauk Highway are not ideal. But this is a standard, set of information that you would get, an attachment table in a traffic study that gives you the level of service that you'll see on the far right columns.
Large that much?
Yeah, I can, and I'm also going to circle so that you see the pertinent points here. But anyway, so this gives you the different, well, I guess I shouldn't zoom in that much. This gives you the different turning movements with, you'll see there's two main gray bars here. This is 2022 no build condition, which is if this project is not done. And then this is the 2022 build condition, which is if the project is completed. That's standard. This is all a standard format. So if you look at this, so this right here, and these are identical, all of these rows. This is a, this here is a little bit misleading. That's an aggregate actually of these two below it. But this would be, if you're making, the first one here is a left turn as you're heading towards Montauk, a left turn onto Panago Place. And you'll see here, this is the seconds per vehicle for turning movement in AM, PM, and Saturday, AM, PM weekday peak hour, and then Saturday peak hour. So this would mean that in the AM peak hour, making a left turn from Montauk Highway onto Panago Place, you're heading towards Montauk, the average amount of time you'd have to wait is 10 seconds. Obviously, that's not the hardest turn to make, the turning onto Panago Place. So you wouldn't expect a large number. And you'll see this is the level of service, which is a grade that's given based on the amount of time generally for a turning movement. They're all relatively good, A, B, B. These two, this is a southbound left turn. This is if you're at Panago Place turning onto Montauk Highway and you're making a left-hand turn. The one below it is when you're at Panago Place turning onto Montauk Highway making a right-hand turn. As you can see, if you just look at these grades here, it's terrible.
It's already at an F.
Yeah.
What are they? I
It's
can't read.
already at failure.
F, 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 D, F, F.
That's the no build.
Yeah, and that's no build. That's if this project isn't even done.
Those are existing conditions. Those are
Correct.
existing conditions.
97 seconds.
Yeah, although even though, so you can't go further down than F. But if you look at the times here, so if you look at those, it is a substantial difference.
Can you read those, Eric? Because I can't see.
Yeah, this is the most drastic ones are the left-hand AM, PM, and Saturday turning movements, which you go from 97 seconds to 97 seconds to 196 seconds, basically. Then from 242 to 470, and then from 520 to 861. So obviously,
5 minutes.
but this is why the traffic study recommends that there be a traffic signal. This is what they estimate with mitigation, which by that they mean a traffic signal. So you have the eastbound delay. Excuse me here. I just gotta orient the number here. Highway, Panago Place. Okay, so that's your east, but this is your left-hand turn. So this is counts in traffic. This is through traffic. This is your, excuse me. This would be your left-hand turn off of Panago Place onto Montauk Highway. You can see the delay is significantly reduced and it puts you in the Bs instead of the Fs. This would be if you're making a right-hand turn off of Panago Place, because you'd have a traffic signal there that would control movements. They predicted it would greatly improve the amount of
We
time.
really can't consider that though, right? Because.
You can't. You were just asking for the numbers and telling you this is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm not.
But we can ask the DOT.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I guess.
But we have an application before
Yeah,
us.
I mean, I guess the point I was trying to make is that I think if you hire a consulting engineer, they're going to give you basically the same numbers and come to the same conclusion.
What about a roundabout? We had recommended.
Yeah, that's also-
Other than a
That's
traffic,
also DOT.
traffic.
Well,
light.
it's
Excuse
also
me?
That's
DOT.
also DOT,
No, I
right?
understand,
It's
but I'm
DOT's
saying in
choice.
terms of the assessment here, a roundabout, was what we recommended.
And the DOT's
Yeah.
policy is, as I
That's
understand
correct.
it, to prefer roundabouts to traffic lights. So, that's something, I think the overarching point here is that we can use this information to write the letter to the DOT and get them a little more deeply involved in this process. You're right, that we can't.
Yeah, I mean,
we can't
I think we
make our
have to
decision
proceed
based
as
on
if
it,
it's not.
but we can be proactive. So I want to.
No, I would love to hear, if you don't mind, I would love to hear.
Is this about the transportation issue?
Just about the traffic, yeah.
All right, the traffic, yeah.
So just with respect to the traffic, we did submit the updated engineering study, and as Eric stated, it was reduced because the reduction in square footage of the building. So obviously we've reduced the square footage of the building even further, so the impacts on traffic would be further reduced. The town board as lead agency, found, quote, "The proposed project will not present the potential for any significant adverse impacts to existing traffic conditions. The primary effect of the proposed facility would be a delay in turning movements from Panther Place and not through traffic on Montauk Highway." And the actual EAF, they summarize the conclusions of the traffic study, which is that the traffic the site is generating is already existing on the road system on Montauk Highway, and is currently, but this traffic is currently traveling to Southampton Hospital in order for patients to receive services. Vehicles must travel in the town of East Hampton will be reduced, as no patient will be required to drive all the way to the hospital. Emergency vehicle response times from pickup of a patient to arrival at hospital emergency room will decrease significantly. Volunteer ambulance personnel will be able to get back into service quicker, saving more than an hour to Southampton Hospital and back. The impact of the site traffic is primarily an increase in the delay for the traffic exiting Pantego onto Montauk Highway. Traffic volumes for through traffic on Montauk Highway will be unimpeded by the addition of the site traffic from the project. Signalized intersection capacity analysis at the intersection indicate that a signal would be good. So those were the summary conclusions of the traffic study that were noted by the town board before they adopted a negative declaration with respect to the impact to traffic.
Yeah, and what you just read, I read too, and one thing that I don't want to critique another board or the EF part 3, but it was striking to me that it was almost all focused on Montauk Highway. And I do think that Panago Place is an issue. They said, oh, well, there's an issue there, but Montauk Highway might be better because there's less people. And I understand that is the most important thoroughfare. But, Panago Place was sort of glossed over there. And I think as the numbers show, it's a problem. Traffic's a problem in a lot of places in town.
Right.
I'm not saying it's prohibitive, but I think that my concern, is not alleviated by, I think, that part of what you just read.
I just believe a further study would just be at the expense of the applicant, and it would reflect reduced numbers.
And I think-
Reduction in the size of the building.
And so to that point, I guess I'm sorry if this, and I opened up a can of worms, but I think to the point of hiring an engineer, I actually think that Eric made a really good point, and that what's it going to do? They're showing the numbers are bad that we're worried about. The numbers are bad. I think it's a problem. Frankly, I think a traffic light would be a problem because I think then you would impact Montauk Highway traffic.
Yeah.
And I think a roundabout's a problem. I think if we're going to create a traffic problem or a further traffic problem, an emergency service center is a good reason to do it. So I think you have that going for you. So I'm not saying that the traffic is prohibitive here. But it remains a concern to me. And again, I welcome other board members. And I don't think that I don't think we can wait and say, there's going to be a light or assume there's going to be something there. And I'm not sure that that is actually a better scenario, even though it would help the Panago Place traffic. So I'll leave that there for now until the rest of the board members weigh in. And just go through quickly the rest of my comments. Parking was reduced. You meet the requirement. I trust you have a well thought out design here that has the parking that you need for what you're proposing. And I think that it's designed well and the traffic flow looks good. The buffer, the 50-foot buffer, again, I defer to Thomas on that, and he says that there's no problem there. So I have no issue with the underground structures being there. I think the bike path would be a nice addition, and I'm glad that you're willing to do that. The generator, I would love to hear from your mechanical engineer to confirm. It is my understanding as well that natural gas generators, usually generators run off propane and diesel. If there is a way to have it off natural gas, and there is a way to get, a guarantee from National Grid, that would be great. I understand that's probably unlikely, but I would like to flesh this out a little bit so we have something in our record that we know we've, looked into it as much as we can. I agree with other board members that propane is preferred. I think there's some safety issues there, and I understand about the size of your generator that propane might not be an option. But again, I would just want something from your mechanical engineer that says, and maybe that's in the file. I looked at the file pretty extensively. But if that's not detailed in there, please just provide that for our, own file. As far as the other things that, the clear planning issues, lighting and landscaping, I have no issue. I think it looks like a well thought out, beautiful site. And frankly, unless you're going to the hospital, you probably aren't going to see it. But I'm happy that it will look nice for those who are unfortunately going to the hospital. One last thing I want to say about, I'm sorry, I promised I wasn't going to talk about traffic anymore, but that was a lie. And Thomas will get mad at me doubly because to mention another site here, Stephen Hand's Path was often referred to. Frankly, there'd be huge traffic problems at various turning places there too. So I just want to put this in the context of filling a community need. I do think that this type of facility should go someplace. I think wherever it goes, or the places I've heard of, thought about, will cause traffic problems. And that, I think, is, in the applicant's favor. And all of that said, like I started, the town board gave you a lease. They agreed to the zone change. I think they're really in favor of this. And I want to make sure that we're sort of slipping into our proper role here and looking at, the planning issues. The biggest concern for me is still traffic, but to conclude here, I think ultimately I'm sort of a little bit skeptical, but ready to see this thing move forward. Yeah.
I think the way to do this for our board's purpose is to go through the questions, and as we go through them, if anyone has a particular comment, something that they want to emphasize, we can stop and hear from that. So the first question is, should the narrative items requested in the board's previous post-meeting memorandum dated August 6, 2020 be provided? Do any other issues pertaining to the proposed nature of operation of the facility need to be addressed at this time?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Generally,
I don't think the answer should be in our records.
yeah, I agree. I will say this, though, I was one of the people who was concerned, and I used the phrase mission creep, and some people who didn't push back on that. I will say that in the lease, if you look at the lease, under permitted use, page 2 of the lease, paragraph 101, H, permitted use, to build an emergency ambulatory care facility for outpatient treatment, to include an emergency room to continue to meet the healthcare needs of the community of East Hampton. I'm kind of surprised it didn't say to build and operate. So that's the definition of what the permitted use is. And then further on in the lease, it says that I have to find the paragraph, but it basically says that subject to all, this is 2.03, subject to all of the terms, covenants, and conditions of this lease, lessee, that's the hospital, shall use the premises only for the permitted use and customary accessory uses to the permitted use. So, that may be, just because I've got my fair share of leases in my life. This gives me comfort, more comfort than I had previously with respect to the issue of Mission Creek, because it seems, unless they're going to violate the lease, that this is what they can do with the facility. It's right here. And so,
What are customary accessories?
well, there you go. Council, yes. No, I agree with you, but
Is it yoga? Is it?
I don't know. Do you do yoga in an emergency room?
So again, I mean, this is a 911 reporting facility. This is a real emergency room. This is not,
Well, my concern had been,
this is not an urgent care facility at all. It's-
my concern when I used that phrase was that the possibility that you might find a need going forward to emphasize elder care or geriatric care or some other aspect of medical treatment. But
No, it's governed by Article
this is
20
emergency. This is emergency.
Public Health
That's
Law.
what it says.
And it's an emergency room. It is
Emergency.
not,
It
it's not
wouldn't
an
be
elder
covered.
care facility.
No, that one.
It has requirements under New York state law that it's meeting, even the design of every aisle and room in the building.
That being said, though, I do agree with all the other board members, which are clear, that I think a more fulsome narrative, actually. Which, I mean, you're a large way there with your response.
No, I'm happy to provide that to the board. That's not a problem. I'm happy to
Can
provide
I just
that.
editorialize on that for a second? Yeah, because I think that and not to kind of anticipate what the public is going to say about this when the hearing happens, but I do think there is sort of a bit of a sentiment in the converse of that, which is it enough? Is it a 24-hour urgent care facility, right? As opposed to, is it going to be too much at some point down the line, right? I think that's also so a clear narrative that really kind of expresses what this is about. I think is important.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you're willing
I
to.
believe that's in the town board record, but I'm happy to submit further.
Yeah.
Well, and then the letter that we got from the public seems to think that it was more of an urgent care.
Well, that letter is incorrect because they suggested that it's not going to be open 24/7, but it is, and it's a 911 receiving.
So that would be good for our records to have
That
that.
was incorrect. Yeah.
One other thing, I'm sorry, I should have said this before, and it relates to what Ed just said.
Mhm.
I think that it being 911 emergency place is important. The helipad was important to me too.
Me too.
I'm relieved by the fact you say that we can still
Anyway,
veteran, although
Yeah.
I would encourage a dedicated spot on the roof or someplace, if at all possible.
Mhm.
I realize there are constraints, but I frankly think, making sure that we can take care of the most, important emergencies, serious emergencies would
I mean, they
be.
will be, and oftentimes, quite frankly, the most urgent, emergencies are taken right from the scene.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
That's right.
I just can't think of a hospital, and I know that with somewhere in the facility, you don't have a giant circle with the H
right.
for the health.
Well, maybe that people that need that. I mean, I noticed in your letter, talk about certain types of ambulance calls. It says, will go to this facility. That suggests that certain types won't. So that's one of my questions. Which types of ambulance calls will not go to the facility?
Right.
Maybe they go to the airport.
Yeah, urgent trauma that needs immediate, open heart surgery or brain surgery or something like.
Something beyond.
I have a list of services that are provided by this building, and what actual services will be addressed.
So
So we can go through. that.
It's in there. I remember reading it. And it's in, your capacities are very specified.
Yeah.
Not the hospital's capacity is very specified, so.
Even Southampton is limited, right?
Yeah, at a certain point, you're on your way to
That's
Stony
right.
Brook, so.
They transport to Sunnybrook all the time.
All right, who's next? Yeah, no, I know, just. Will the board require, so the narrative is
Yes, absolutely.
will the board require additional information pertaining to traffic and circulation, including but not limited to review by a consulting engineer? I'm sure a lot of time, let's come to a consensus on that.
I think it's more important that we send a letter or whatever it is that we need to do to urge the DOT to do something about that. Paragraph 27.
I think that Lou's exactly right. And I just want to say that, what Ian pointed out at the end of his conversation about traffic is that this is a problem anywhere we decide to do this in the town of East Hampton. It is not going to be exactly the same problem everywhere.
But as an initial matter, do we?
But I do think it's really important that we tackle this, and it's complicated, right?
Before we do that, do we think that we need another traffic study? Can we?
No.
Well,
I do not.
Let's talk about it a little bit. So some of the things that were mentioned were possible shared curb cut with the town hall campus. That was mentioned. There's also those other businesses going further east that all have their own curb cuts right now. So the traffic, where the traffic intersects Montauk Highway, say from Bostwick's to Town Hall, is not very well coordinated. And if we're going to try to get the DOT involved, we may want to try to coordinate some of this stuff off of Montauk Highway.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, how are you?
I mean-
What do you mean, how would you coordinate this?
Well, you'd have a service road
Right,
behind here
yeah.
that would come to one, kind of like you think of Bridgehampton Commons.
So tie these.
You go around the back,
businesses. I see.
yeah, and there's one, entrance and exit.
Sounds good.
So that's
Are
something,
you suggesting that or?
well, I'm saying,
Thinking it too.
I'm thinking that's something that hasn't been done, that we could ask an engineer for a thought on. It's mentioned actually in all the paperwork. The other thing is that I think what everybody's saying, I think, is that we want to make sure that this facility does not have any mission creep and is not going to be a commercial operation or an expanded operation.
But that's speculation, and it's the application
Well-
before you is an emergency room, and that's what you would be approving.
That's
Right.
It's speculation
Okay,
that
so
we're gonna break
then-
the law and
then-
then restrain us into.
No. But then I ask you, why do you need 56 parking spaces?
Because that's what's required under the code,
No, well,
47.
you have more than is required under the code. Right? You do.
Not that many more.
Well, why would you have,
Typically, you try to meet the code requirements for parking.
I know, but why would you have more than was required?
Not because we're gonna,
No,
offer some additional service that would trigger additional parking.
Well, that's what we want. We want to make sure.
But they can't.
They can't.
Yeah.
Allow them
The
to.
lease doesn't permit it.
Well, the lease says accessory uses. Come on, it's not that.
I don't think that's
No,
that.
this is completely speculation. You're supposed to apply the law to the application before you, with all due respect.
It's
And that's not what's.
Speculation. You haven't given us a narrative.
Oh, we have
I
given
know.
narratives.
So
to the town
what?
board.
That's
I'm
why
happy
we
to
have
do
to
that.
speculate. That's why I'm
No,
speculating.
no, that's not true. The application is clear. The application. is
Well,
very
I don't
clear.
think it is.
Okay, well, I'm going to clear that up for you
Okay.
in my submission to the board.
All right.
But we're not going to, suggest other uses. That's not going to be a part of this application. We're not,
Right.
the only uses we're seeking to do are the emergency
Really,
department. That's
So
it.
as somebody who lives here year round, for me, the idea that there's 14 treatment rooms, 56 parking spaces in
There's 10
February.
treatment rooms. There's
And-
10.
Okay, now there's 10.
Yeah,
10 treatment rooms,
there's 14
56 parking
employees.
spaces, plus 14 employees in February in East Hampton. You're going to have a lot of downtime. And I think this facility is going to be very busy in the season, but I don't think it's going to be busy in the off season. And I don't really see anything in here about seasonal staffing or operation.
It's 14 employees, it's 10 rooms. That's what we're proposing.
14 employees year round.
That's the part, and that's the additional parking too. I think it's 15 employees.
What are you going to do with 14 employees in February? I'm just wondering.
This is almost a full-time built out
I think it's
population.
way far afield. at this
Well,
point.
I think it goes to the size of the building, the amount of parking, the amount of traffic, Sam. And frankly, this is a type 1 action. That means it's likely to have a significant impact. The town board deemed it, that it wasn't going to have an impact, which is unusual that they do the secret and not us.
Well,
So
the
I
agents-
They were lead agents.
I
They
know,
declare
but they don't
lead agency.
declare lead agency on many projects that are.
They had the first action, which was the zone change. The application could not proceed without them doing secret.
for the zone change, so they.
For the application.
Okay, I see, all right.
The application.
It is atypical, you know.
It's an.
It's an-
The building is going to have a 911 ambulance receiving facility. It's going to have pediatric treatment room. It's going to have an OB/GYN treatment room, bariatric treatment room, resuscitation trauma room, cardiac monitoring, CT scanner, 2 negative pressure rooms, which are critical, decontamination room, an MRI shielded and capable room, advanced stat lab, ER inpatient draw area where you can draw blood and test for that before you get sent somewhere else, an ultrasound testing room, and an ophthalmology room with slit lamps for eye emergencies.
Can people,
That's what's in the structure. And then
people
it's
from
required.
Sagaponic, would people from Sagaponic and Sag Harbor Village be brought here? I'm just curious.
Sag Harbor Village, part of Sag Harbor Village is within the town of East Hampton.
I know that.
So people within the town of East Hampton, and we're anticipating that this is for the people of the town of East Hampton.
Right,
who will be close by.
Realistically,
Well, there could be someone driving through and Oklahoma gets in an accident.
Yeah.
You're not
We're not going to reject people based on where they live.
well, you know what?
Ask
If
where you
we,
live before they admit you.
Yeah,
in
they
an
don't.
Emergency
no, but if
situation.
we,
I
if
think
we
it's
had
going to be
a,
brought to the closest possible place. And that's the idea, is to help people get emergency care as soon as possible.
right,
That's the goal.
and usually if it's serious, send them on to another facility,
Well,
right?
that's,
Assess their injuries for sure. Get
Right,
treatment by a board certified emergency doctor
right.
and then send them off.
And
I think-
Right, which is very similar.
I think the fundamental question is whether or not you accept the notion that this facility is needed in this town. And if you do, then, it sounds to me, and I'm certainly no expert in building hospitals, but worked on a couple of cases. It seems to me that, you have to leave it to the people who run and build and run hospitals to say, yes, these are the things that you need to put in. And regardless of the time of the year, regardless of the number of people who might be using it on any given day, these are the things that you need to have a meaningful and valuable emergency facility. So, I think a lot of the questions you ask, they're valid and certainly be addressed in the narrative, and I would expect that they would be. And
Well,
we'll
let me
revisit
just
that.
ask a couple, I'm not gonna go
I do
on.
want to get Ian, I did.
Oh, well, I
stop
didn't know
you.
Ian
No,
wasn't
I want to get, everybody.
And I'm not saying bad or good, but I'm saying, will people be able to come for diagnostic, for use of the diagnostic equipment?
It's
Not by ambulance.
emergency medical services.
Can people come here without an ambulance?
Yes, because when I've been to the emergency room, I'm sure many of you have, or with a
Yeah.
child or someone, you don't always go by ambulance.
Okay, so
It can
it's,
still be an emergent medical
so
situation.
but that means that the person bringing themselves has made a determination it's an emergency, right?
I don't know I can't speak to what other people will determine. This is getting so far off.
I think you're being evasive.
No, but I'm not being evasive. I have nothing to hide.
No.
The application.
A lot of people,
Here, this will be wonderful.
Maybe,
Sorry.
I mean,
no, I think it's a great thing, but I think our job is to make it as good as it can be and have as little adverse impact on this community as it can. Not to just say it's wonderful and look the other way.
No one's asking you to do that.
Where are you going?
Randy, you have to
No, I'm not asking
evaluate, you have to evaluate the application that's before you. I understand there's not a narrative, but there's been a lot of
Right.
Well, that's what the narrative's
submitted.
for, because we'll
Yeah.
receive it, we'll analyze it, and then we'll.
So there's an
Well, this is
application that's
new-
in front
this
of
is
you,
new.
asking questions about what it isn't.
Well, no, I'm
Doesn't-
being told now that anyone who thinks they have an emergency can drive themselves,
But that's like any hospital.
but any hospital, right? I mean, there's
Well,
people go to Southampton Hospital with a little baby's cut on his
okay,
hand.
so it's just
You know?
clarity. I'm looking for clarity.
But that's an emergency.
Actually, what you're looking for is how are they going to run the shop on
Yeah.
a given specific event? And the answer is they're going to run it like a hospital. They're going to run it like if a person comes in with a little baby cut, they're going to, maybe they'll give them a Band-Aid, maybe they won't. But whatever they do, you have to presume that it being a hospital and it being run by professionals, that they're going to treat or deal with whatever is being sought for, whatever treatment is sought, in the way that a professional will deal with it. And we can't, sitting here, predict how they're going or mandate.
You're
how
also
they're
not
gonna
supposed to
treat
regulate
anything.
business operations of applications that come before
No, but
you.
it
That's
has-
outside of the scope of your purview completely.
Is your question like relevant to the number of parking spaces or something
Yeah,
like that?
I
Is
mean,
that where
that's
you're
what I'm
going with this?
asking.
That's what I'm
There's
trying to.
more, there's at least 9 more spaces than required by the
I
code.
don't know why that's such a terrible thing.
Well, I don't know why it's needed. Why do you need 56 parking spaces?
Well, I'm not, listen, I don't know who figured out, X number of parking spaces per X number of
Well,
square feet.
all I'm saying is I'm trying to make it as.
So it's 41 for visitors and 15 for employees, parking spaces.
Right. But that's.
And there's, the previous plan, we had 72. Now the revised plan provides 56 spaces. 41 for visitors and 15 for employees. We have 2 truck spaces and 4 ambulance spaces.
All right, so.
And that's the parking.
I just think this is what the people who are concerned is that they want to make sure that this is, it's narrow so that it has the least impact as possible on the traffic. And we didn't talk, the traffic, I didn't see talks about ambulance entering and exiting. Is that in the traffic study at all? I don't think it is. Yeah. So that's going to have another impact on traffic, especially on a busy summer weekend.
So ambulance coming, flashers on, siren running, that kind of impact with that as opposed to
But the
just traffic.
turning in,
Yeah.
I think is what you mean.
Turning in
Is the
at
turning
Canada.
movements that the ambulance would create.
That's in the traffic study.
Yeah.
You're gonna have that no matter where you have it.
It's in the traffic
That's
study.
right.
Right.
So is there
Yeah.
a specific definition for 911 response emergency?
Yes, it's all governed by New York State Public
It's
Health
very-
Law, Article
very
28.
narrow definition.
But it's not.
It's regulated, and it's gonna be run by
Point.
a New York State SUNY Stony Brook Hospital. It's run by a New York State.
I got that, but a
That's pretty
911
significant.
a 911 emergency room implies, and with ambulances,
Yes.
suggests that it's not like our urgent care facilities
Correct.
where anybody can go for whatever reason they think. And that's what this is. It's
No, it's an emergency room.
Any
It's a New
emergency
York
room has
State
that.
regulated.
I got you.
There's a specific difference. In an urgent care facility, there's maybe 1 doctor or physician's assistant and 2 employees. We have 14 employees. We're gonna have board certified emergency room doctors. This is gonna be run by a New York State hospital. This is significantly different.
So it's probably gonna, which might not be a bad thing. It's probably gonna eclipse these other facilities.
Yeah.
And put them out of business.
And yet another issue that we as the planning board
That's not-
can address.
No, I mean.
Sometimes you gotta kill it with the
I will.
narrative.
I'm
Okay.
happy to submit that to the
Right.
board. Even further.
Okay, I'll wait, but I have 2 other.
No, I spoke plenty. I know I was only answering the question. And I would say that Eric convinced me we don't need to have an engineer because I think the numbers are bad and they are what they are. I think somebody else can pay to say that, yeah, they're bad is not going to help us. I would not be in favor of contacting DOT because I'm not sure that a traffic light is a good idea. I'm not sure a roundabout's a good idea. I think all of these are problems. I think we should write a letter to the town board saying that we're concerned about traffic in this area. Please look into it. Maybe it's a, planning consultant. I'm not sure. I don't want to write a letter
Why
saying,
don't you like it? You think it'll slow down traffic?
well, because frankly, I was not in favor of recommending a zone change because I didn't think we had the information. I don't think we have the information. I don't know enough to say that a traffic light that's going to interfere with Montauk Highway traffic is a good thing. I think an ambulance can already get in and out. They got lights on. I think that I'm just not
But if
sure that's a solution.
If somebody getting out of Panther Place has to wait 8 minutes, I think that's what the 800 and whatever seconds.
Well, I'm just saying my
I
vote.
mean, to wait almost 10 minutes to get onto the Montauk Highway, that is going to be very frustrating.
You won't
They
go to
already
town
have
hall.
to do that, though. They already have to do that. I mean, I think that the thing that. Can I talk now?
Please, yeah.
It seems like I'm waiting for my turn.
No, I'm actually, it's open to,
Okay.
that's why we're doing it question by question.
So I think we asked that the applicant look at in their traffic study, look at a roundabout. I mean, I think that traffic lights stop traffic. That's what they're meant to do. And I think roundabouts are more conducive to keeping things moving. Anybody that's ever tried to come west at particular times of day, since that traffic light was put in over by, Pete's Place and Wainscott, it's a nightmare that light, it makes everything slows. You ask anyone that commutes and they say it slows it way down. So I don't know that a traffic light is the solution. I think a roundabout might be, and as you said earlier, that seems to be the DOT's preferred method anyway, but I think we should write a letter to say, we're concerned about that. I don't think we need to get a traffic engineer, as Eric says, what's an F, F minus, it's not gonna get any worse than it already is. So it's not gonna be a revealing study. But I do think as people who live here and traverse these roads, we have a special ability to recognize when traffic is bad, because we experience it personally, and that we can, lend that perspective to this endeavor. And I think we should, because I think that's going to be the quality of life impact on anybody that isn't going to the emergency room. It's really the traffic issue.
So count you as someone who wants to send a letter.
Yeah, and I want to say roundabout.
Let's, I know you have a couple more comments, so why don't you bring those in, and then we can wrap up and make a decision about what we want to say, because it sounds like we have some division on the board about that, if anything, to the DOT. So
I agree with Ian and Kathy. I mean, I would say we write a letter to the town board saying, take a look at the traffic circulation and parking, the restaurant to town hall, the way that they did on the north side of the highway and lanes. See if there's a way to coordinate it so it's not so haphazard. That would be one. The DOT, I don't know, I tend to agree with Ian. And another traffic light, good God. I would walk to the work if I worked at the planning department. Or ride my bike, because forget it.
What about a roundabout?
Well, I don't think, I would agree with you, and I don't think we have enough information. I guess I'd rather start with a small planning study of this area and address the traffic.
you see,
The East Hampton Hamlet study, page 30, Hamlet Center Master Plan, does discuss that. It says the Montauk Highway corridor painted over a business area is characterized by scattering of small scale, mostly one-story buildings comprised of professional offices and medical buildings. The plans to establish a Southampton Hospital satellite facility on Pantego Place will support the existing cluster of medical facilities and vice versa. Although auto-oriented, the low intensity of businesses in this area does not impede the free-flowing traffic along Montauk Highway. That's
at odds with the traffic study that you submitted. So honestly, I think we should be blunt with the town board and say, you made a negative declaration. We are concerned about the traffic here. We support the project, but hey, help us out. I mean, you're going to say this is a big impact.
Well, see, the thing is that what I'm concerned about is that the whole issue of Montauk Highway is not a town board issue. It's a state DOT issue. And I think that it'll help our decision-making you're contacting the State Department of Transportation, you may get no response, it may go into a black hole, but at the very least, we can try to get the additional information that I think everyone at this table thinks we need to make a decision about the traffic.
I think we should go with Randy's idea about the service road, and I think we should go with Kathy's idea about contacting the DOT. I mean, I think both of those things make sense. And I think we should, you're right, I think we should emphasize the roundabout.
So we have two letters.
The town board may not have jurisdiction over Montauk Highway, but they decided to change the zone. So they're not totally out of the picture in terms of.
And frankly, they probably got more pull than we do.
There is that.
We're not that important.
We don't get elected, so we certainly are. But the question is, and so then do we not want to do a letter to the DOT, or?
I vote no.
Well,
I think, listen.
I think a letter has to go.
Go ahead.
I think a letter has to go, and I think it is important that we contact the town board like Randy wants to do, and Ian. And maybe we should emphasize in that letter that they should contact the DOT if they have.
Also,
Yeah.
well,
Or maybe they do it.
Maybe we recommend to the town board that they contact the DOT with our, and include our recommendations, what we would send. to them.
I'm leaning in that direction, because you know what, I don't want to be a pipsqueak.
Yeah, and it would
You know,
overstep,
you know,
it might overstep, given that we're not lead agency anyway, you know.
I mean, look, no, you're right, they're the ones who make that, and they're the ones who are, you know, they're the lead agency, it's their project. As much as I would like us to be able to speak directly to the DOT, it might be viewed as like, well, who are you? Now, again, you know,
Yeah.
it's been said that we can contact the DOT, and I suppose we can, we are, you know, a board of this town. But maybe the greater impact will be with the town board, and we can cover both
I think
issues,
that's the
both
better way to go.
Yeah.
the back road,
Yeah,
the
Randy's
service road.
suggestion of a
Right,
service.
I vote for that. I mean, the traffic study that was done has certainly identified the thing that we all know, which is it's an F, right? This is bad. And I think, like Ian said earlier, I think wherever this thing would be situated along Montauk Highway or feeding into it would be the exact same problem.
And-
So we need to go from the, yeah, it's terrible to what is the solution, right? And I think the town board is the one who really holds those cards. I think we can say we would prefer to see a service road behind those, or
we may not know, a service road may or may not be feasible.
Yeah.
well, I think we just need to say, here are some ideas that we've considered.
Yeah, and to take into consideration the other.
Right, but I think the town board is, my point is, the town board is in a solution, in a better position to move this to a solution than we are. We know it's bad. What's the solution? Help us figure it out.
And we
that's
can make
them.
it clear to them that by giving us this information, will facilitate our
Yeah.
decision-making process within the context of.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right. We hold up that as leverage.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they may just say-
It's like persuasive.
The lease does say, if we deny the application, the lease is void.
Well,
But I'm not-
we're not gonna go there.
I'm not going there, I'm just saying, you know.
All right, so we've answered that question,
All right,
right?
and we have answered that question. There'll be one letter going to the town board with all the, I presume, that was really scribing this, understands, I know I'm the one who writes it.
With a great deal of your help, sir.
Yes, indeed. Good. You have my email address. So, no, but we'll put in these different points and make it clear that we need this so that we can do our job. Will the board require additional information pertaining to grading and drainage, including but not limited to a review by a consulting engineer? And I think
No.
that's a big no. All right. And will the board request a written determination of council in regard to the covenant requiring the 50-foot buffer? I think that's right.
You're right, provided.
Yeah, that's done. Okay.
Do we have a written determination?
I can put it in writing. I haven't put
That'd be
anything in
good.
writing.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, I think.
It would be helpful too with respect to the bike path, because sometimes we, run into that problem with other properties.
Will any-
You want a bike path with ambulances coming in and out of the property?
Sorry?
You want a bike path with ambulances?
No, this
Well, it
is
would be
that.
further
Okay.
here, but, as things are developed all along there, we've run into the same problem because of this.
You could increase the business for the emergency. Will any additional, will any additional information pertaining to generator noise or design be required at this time?
Yes, I did this.
Yeah,
All right.
not only generator, but also, I don't know if those ventilation fans or the outdoor equipment now that's in that, that's been moved down to, is there other noise coming from the facility? And Eric, you said we probably look at the aerial, but I know there are houses across the tracks there. I don't know about maybe the abutting properties.
They're not abutting it.
Well, the abutting properties are the water authority in here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, over the other side.
Over the train tracks, there's a reserved area and then a sort of, well, I could show you, but a sort of triangular property that's, was purchased with CPF, but sort of, diagonal to this site on the other side of the tracks are two residences. They are a significant distance away and the other side of train tracks.
I would reiterate again that I don't believe that chapter 185 does have noise standards for a
That's our
facility like
position
this.
too.
However, you certainly could ask for information, but I don't think that there is no noise standard that a facility like this needs to meet, is how I read it.
That's pursuant to Town Code 185-4P that Eric said in his report to you.
So what,
We believe, that's our position. We believe we're satisfying noise regulations
Yeah, I was just going
far
to
away.
ask if you, I think you had offered to do this initially, to make some sound attenuation efforts, around the thing, because the diesel is really loud. I think you're gonna, I mean, I think Randy brought it up, and I think it's a good idea if you could pursue National Grid,
I think that, everyone keeps saying pursue something else. I was informed that we are required to do the diesel under the
So the diesel
regulations
is.
from the public health law.
Got
But
it. That's what I thought I
but we
understood.
can look into sound attenuation and get back to
Yeah,
you.
that would be great. I mean,
Well,
I think.
But
that
let's,
would
do
be-
we know for sure that I thought I heard some hesitation.
Well,
I
I believe that's
think we
probably,
should be definitive about
I think
it.
that's probably true, but if we just have something official, so when you say, hey, we
For
want.
diesel, right.
Yeah, and for what it's
I can
worth, I
provide
think Eric is right about that you probably are exempt from those noise rules, but as a community place, with plenty of room, it seems like it's in everybody's interest to just try to make the noise
That's
Mhm.
cool.
fitting for the zone.
Our special permit standards too,
Mhm.
but I have,
compatibility with the community, even if the
Let's-
noise section doesn't apply.
My
Yeah, no,
concern,
that's
my concern is that have an emergency room and power goes out. I don't want the emergency room to go dark.
Well, I don't think anybody's arguing no generator. We're just saying, hey, keep it as
but-
quiet as.
But if there's a reg that requires a diesel generator, or if good practice requires that there be a diesel generator, then, sound attenuation would be a good and useful thing, and we shouldn't discourage it. But I would say that that's the priority. And having, I know that.
Well,
But I think that, you have to be practical. How long is it? You're talking about half an hour once a week or once a month. And you're talking about during a crisis when there's going to be a lot of other issues besides, oh my, it's noise.
I'm just saying, recently, I was in a town that was the electricity was out, and there was a diesel generator running next door for maybe 5 days. And it
It's
would
loud.
drive you crazy.
Actually, I
It's
can
loud.
speak to that specifically. When I lived up island, more time than now, during Sandy, the people across the street from me, I'm not making this up. As soon as Sandy hit, they went up to New Hampshire. They bought a diesel generator. They brought it back down. They parked it in their driveway. And for 5 days, that's what we heard. And I agree with you. It was a pain. It was noisy, and they were very rude about the whole thing. But
So if we can avoid that
they
problem-
weren't running a hospital.
Right,
That's
but,
the
but if the hospital,
Right, but
Yeah,
it's still
so-
noise.
hospital can be quiet, why not?
Exactly. I think if they're willing to do it,
Yeah, no, I'm not telling her to go, go put her in the front lawn by any
no,
means.
no,
I'm just.
no, I don't know why.
So there's two-
Let's do it, let's just.
Can I just say something? There's two parts to this. One is the sound, the mitigation issue, and the other one is, can we get a definitive answer? I just want to be clear that we covered this. A definitive
Yeah, yes,
answer
I agree. That's
on diesel
important.
versus propane versus natural gas.
Yes.
Yeah.
and that does go to one of the other concerns I have, which is that this property is right next to a Suffolk County Water Authority public supply well field. And the whole question, I accept what your architect said, that if you have a dish that's going to hold more than 100%, that should take care of the spill concern. But we haven't gotten comments back from the water authority yet, have we, Eric? On this?
No, I mean, they rarely comment on
They
it.
involve it.
You're talking about extending a water main or something.
No. Oh, no, but I mean, I think we need their input on having this facility next to a public supply well.
Well, there's a separation requirement of 200 feet, and we meet that. We're at 250 feet plus. So
From your septic system?
from any sanitary leaching field to public water supply wells, there's a separation requirement, and we meet it under the law.
No, he is talking about the diesel generator, though. He's talking about the diesel leak, but, I mean, that's even greater the setback, and there isn't actually a required setback for the water authority for fuel containment.
So it just goes to that we are approving this next to a well field that supplies probably 1,000 homes. And we haven't gotten comments back from the.
I think all comments are going to be important here. I mean, I think
Yeah.
everybody, so
Yeah.
I agree with you.
You know, I don't know if we could ask them what they think. I hear what Liz is saying about the 200.
We have to get Suffolk County Department of Health Services approval, obviously.
Right. Okay, so I just raised that, the proximity of the well field.
Yeah, good point.
All right, so I think we have an answer on that. That we'll get more information. And the last two are, does the board find the proposed lighting plan acceptable?
Yes.
No objection?
Yes.
Yes. And does the board find the proposed landscaping plan acceptable?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for the rain garden and thank you for the solar panels. That's really exciting and well done you.
And thank you for addressing the archaeological issue. I was really concerned about that. I'm glad to know that it is a concern. That's
Yeah, that-
something that, no, I wasn't, if it was more of an issue, I wouldn't minimize it in the least.
Well, thank you for all of your attention to this application.
And
Okay,
yours.
thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Look for our letter in the mail or email.
And we will respond. Thank you.
Okay, next, we have the East Hampton Pods. Randy is the committee on this.
Dun, dun, dun,
Eric,
dun,
you've got this.
Sure.
Is the applicant here?
He is not.
So then we-
What do we say?
Jody, was he notified?
Yes.
Okay, and it's up to you, Sam. I mean,
I am, well, the problem is we also have the resolution on, which is tied to this in the regular meeting. For the modification. Can we even address that resolution without addressing this application?
I mean,
Why,
most of the time you don't have the applicant.
Yeah, on the resolutions, I know. Okay,
Resolution is
but
I think we're ready to go.
on the resolution or on?
On both.
Sam, I mean, when we were doing this completely via Zoom, I had a large concern about people navigating the technical aspect and appearing, but this is our second public meeting. The applicant was at our first public meeting. Jody says he received notice for this
So,
in-person
so
meeting.
miss it at
If,
your
if
peril.
you wish to go forward with it, then I don't see
We'll
a
go
problem.
Okay, we discussed this at the last meeting 2 weeks ago. The only outstanding issue is that the board had requested answers to 3 specific questions from the airport manager. I contacted the airport manager, spoke to him on the phone, spoke to him through email. He sent a copy of FAA approval for this facility to the planning board. It's in the planning board record. He did not directly answer those 3 questions that the planning board had previously asked. I will say, though, based on my conversations with him and based on the fact that he hasn't brought any problems he hasn't come out and said proactively that he has an issue with this facility to the planning board, I would assume that he is okay in general with it. However, you have that documentation that was supplied, and that's the only remaining outstanding issue. And if you do feel that's resolved, then the application would be ready for modification approval.
Very good. Randy,
Yeah, I looked over the FAA documents that Jim Brundage sent, which was very helpful, and I think this is kind of what we would like to get. And it does say from the FAA, no ALP or airport layout plan action is required due to the ALP status at East Hampton Airport. So they said it wouldn't be a problem for air navigation. I'm satisfied that we got what we wanted and that we could go ahead and modify.
very good. Okay, in that case, a little more reason for you to come forward tonight.
I agree. And for the record, can we just, if anybody talks to the airport manager, say that's all we wanted? Nothing scary. No, I mean, I'm serious because it was a dance. It was a dance.
It was quite a dance.
Yeah, it was.
I sat up for one.
Sounds like I should be glad that I was elsewhere. All right, in that case, why don't you, Randy, you do, why don't you do the resolution? You need it?
Okay, in matter of the application of East Hampton Todd's site plan special permit, Sussex County Tax Map 300-191-29. Planning board has reviewed a prior determination of the board and desires to modify certain provisions of the approval as set forth below in this resolution, except as modified herein, the determination is being reaffirmed in all its respects. This, I've read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's been carried 7-0. Continuing then, since we're now out of the work session, with the regular meeting, have a board of review, which I have reviewed. The request of Darren Hampton for a building permit at 26 First Street in Springs. Lot 3, lots 9 through 16, urban parcel number 8, and Suffolk County Tax Map 300-75-2-12.9. Read the board review, and it has an undertaking amount of $1,155. I move for its adoption.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passed and carried 7-0. Next is Spring Hollow LLM. Ian, it's your.
In the matter of Spring Hollow Lot 1 modification for an extension of time for a period of 1 year or until September 28th, 2021. Quick question for Eric and for Jody. These dates all seem a little funny. I know it's retroactive, but is September 28th, 2021 the correct date?
Yes.
Or I read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's been carried. And now, to bring up the last matter on our agenda, we have it's an urban renewal modification, which will walk us through.
I'm not sure if you want the GIS or, actually, I copied one of these, copied that and gallery. That's what it was. But, that would cover it. All right, yeah, let me, well, I'll let you speak.
Okay. This was an application that was submitted requesting a modification of old file map 316 depicted on sheet A1 of the urban renewal study, which proposes to abandon the 30-foot wide Bayview Avenue to the center line in favor of parcel number 27. The applicant has submitted the attached the narrative detailing the reason for the modification request. The urban renewal map indicates that 1/2 of Bayview Avenue in this area is to be open for a driveway to serve parcel number 28. This portion of Bayview Avenue is not required for access as parcel 28 to the north is underwater and was below the mean high water line at the time the urban renewal map was designed and has recently been required by the town of East Hampton. The map does indicate that the other half of Bayview Avenue in front of parcel 27 should be open to abandoned. Given the coastal erosion in this area, the subject parcel 27 fronts on the Peak Bay and is located in a flood zone and is partially underwater. The planning department notes that abandoning the right-of-way as requested would create a larger lot that would have the potential to allow for more development on a parcel subject to coastal erosion and flooding. A larger concern is that this portion of Bayview Avenue is utilized to provide beach access for the other lot owners in the map. The planning department does not recommend the proposal move forward on the grounds that the residents of Bayview Avenue utilize the portion of the road in order to access the beach on the Peak Bay. And additionally, its flood prone location in flood zone AE10 and New York State slosh zone number 3 suggests that further development should not be encouraged in the area.
One question, does the applicant know that this is on for tonight?
I don't know that they're notified for UR map modifications. Yeah, they're not. They're generally not. It's a request that goes in. Ultimately, it would be the decision of the town board, which there would be a public hearing. I guess, I gather LTV can hear me from there. That's what they said earlier, but just to go to the podium. Ultimately, this is a request that needs to be, if it is going to be fulfilled, needs to be granted by the town board. This work session is really just your comments. We don't usually notify the people that have asked for a UR map modification, and it's really neither here nor there. It's just what you think of it and what comments you want to send to the town board. So certainly they would be notified through the regular public hearing process when it goes to the town board, if the town board even decides to honor the request. Again, as Will said, it's our recommendation that they should not. But yeah, so I mean, that's a roundabout way after a long discussion of saying, no, we did not.
I mean, what you're saying, it all sounds like the planning department's position on this is perfectly reasonable. I'm just a little worried about, we're being asked to chime in on this and to give our opinion. And if the applicant doesn't even know that we're going to be considering this application, and maybe they have something to say about this, but then they will have to face at the town board this planning board saying no, saying we don't think it's a good idea without having heard from them. That concerns me a little bit.
There's also the consulting engineer who could get green planning department.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see that.
No, I mean, I think it's typical, yeah. As Eric is saying, it's like the urban renewal parcels. It's just a different.
Yeah,
It's a different treatment.
I totally understand what you're saying, but I mean, you could think of it in the context of, there's a consulting engineer, there's the planning department, you're the planning board. This is all information that would go to the town board. Think of it as another, you usually don't have, you'll hold a public hearing when an application is complete. And sometimes you let members of the public come up and speak for a couple of minutes when you're reviewing an application, but you generally don't try to get, that whole forum.
No, but I'm not looking for it.
Oh, yeah, no, I
The
understand.
applicant.
But why don't we just, I think that's a really good point, Sam, but I think it's also, this is the process. So let's say we didn't have the benefit to hear from the applicant during their arguments, but, based on the planning department or consultant engineer, we don't see a planning reason why this is a good idea. But,
And there'll be a public hearing before the town.
Yeah, no,
I think it's a good idea to specifically say we did not hear.
Yeah, I'd like to make that, at the very least, I'd like to make it clear that we made that.
So if they go to the town board and have a really compelling argument that we didn't hear, the town board says, oh.
Yeah, we never heard it. What I'm saying is that we give our imprimatur of approval.
I understand the concern, trust me, yeah.
Well, we need a motion.
It's nobody's application on the board either. So,
Why don't
somebody.
you do it?
I would move that we send comments saying we haven't heard the argument in favor of the applicant, but based on planning department or consultant engineer and our own personal opinion, we don't see a planning reason why this should be approved.
Perfectly put. I second that.
I have a question. I have a question about the planning department's comments. Okay. So I understand the reason about enlarging the property so that it would allow for more building on it. But I'm not sure I get what you're saying about the access to the beach. Well, how does this affect them? Because they're still part of the road. I think it's the western side of the road.
Sure.
That's still available to get eastern, sorry. So I'm not sure I understand that reasoning. What are you trying to say there?
You would still certainly have half of the right of way, but you need to consider also, if we should have elaborated this, you need to consider also, let me screen share here to show you that essentially if you're granting their request to allow an abandonment to their half of the road, on the other side of the street, there's also a residence. And, I would think that if we were. Yeah. Obviously, if you look here, and I can show you the If I can find the right one, there it is. Although,
Well, we don't want people going only one way, either to the ocean or from the ocean. We want.
well, I mean, it's not a a vehicle access. It's not vehicle access. And then also, I mean, you have these structures here, which is another story that are in the way here. But yeah, I mean, the short of it is basically just that you're narrowing this. And then it really sets up the idea that you would be allowing that person on the other side of the right of way to be abandoning to the halfway point as well. You know.
So it's not really an access issue. It's just you're setting precedent for the other side.
You'd be blocking off, if they both abandoned to the halfway point, you'd be blocking off access here and you couldn't get to the beach.
It would be harder for the other person. It would be harder for the other.
There's other houses that don't involve either of those two properties. That could-
Yeah, we're not talking about them. We're talking about other residents.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Is this a motion on the table?
No, there is a motion, needs to be second.
Second.
Having heard that, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So you have the resolution with the hedge language.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
Next. All those in favor? 2 weeks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And welcome, Will, to your first
Welcome, Will. I
in-person
didn't know that
meeting.
was your
Thank
first
you. Well
time.
done.
Congratulations. Thank you all. We are adjourned.